Hallo.
Hi.
Moment, meine Kopfhörer sind nicht an. Okay.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Everybody had a good National Treason Day. Been working with a bunch of UK folks lately. They won't stop giving me hell about that. Hey, congrats again on the Microc stuff.
Thank you, guys. Happy to be on board.
It's been fun seeing all the chatter on LinkedIn about that stuff.
Yeah, let's type in, so if you have the running notes, you can add agenda items there too if you want. Just paste them into the chat. There wasn't a major agenda today, but got some things to talk about there and add more if you want to.
Hi, everyone.
I almost want to bring up while we're waiting about Microx and just because I noticed that KCP, the team behind it, is proposed it to Sandbox now, and that reinvigorated me at least to think about the API shapes that different Kubernetes-based, providers, capability providers, might use, like, what Crossplane's XRM and Kratix's promises and stuff like that. And then we've had a number of API standards projects coming through recently. AIP presented to us a couple weeks ago. Yassine, of course, Microx has been coming through. And they've been wondering if there's a synergy there to, like, let's say Knative duck types, where they choose certain attributes to go into the APIs that they expose, and they define them a certain way. Is there a testing framework that we could use to establish conventions around those kinds of API shapes? And could we leverage some of these API projects to define, higher level API conventions for, second level Kubernetes APIs, for lack of a better term?
So are you speaking somewhat to projects like CDK?
I'm not sure. I'm thinking more of like Crossplane.
Right, because CDK Kates is an attempt to give a second order level of abstractions through an API, and I think it's a really interesting effort. And I think, just to maybe expand on perhaps what you were alluding to, is we could definitely do some research into that area because it's beneficial to a lot of folks.
Yeah, my thinking is, like, if the APIs are more conventionalized, there's less room for errors, it's more efficient, less cognitive load. So yeah, CDKs. Yeah.
I proposed to add CDKs to the white paper, and then Abby responded to create like a more open discussion around how we want to structure the tooling around that. And I think, like, I responded to her, like, it really, in my view, it's really interesting to talk about, like, this distinction about how you can extend or create some sort of API, because the difference between, in my view, between Crossplane and CDK is that Crossplane, unlike CDK and Helm, not only create the high level abstraction or API, it's also extend the Kubernetes API, where CDK doesn't. Like, CDK can create an abstraction there on top of, and basically double down, like beneath it, they create all these kind of objects, whether they're an extension of the Kubernetes API or not. Like, it's for you to choose, but they're not. It's not extending the Kubernetes API per se. So
Interesting. Yeah, that's on my, of like the 2 or 3 things that the tag and the working group might do, gathering up the CDK 8.8, KDES and Crossplane, and I think of Kratix because I work with Abby a lot. That's her, they have promises too, which do some of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's good. Thank you for the tip on CDK. We have to include that in there. I need to look at that issue too, Tsachi. I know I'm a little behind. Okay, it's 10:06. So maybe we should get to our agenda here. So I pasted in the notes. I pasted in a potential agenda. Do we have anyone new today? I don't think so. We're all familiar faces here. So I put in, just to briefly give you all an update on what's happening in the working groups. KubeCon plans we can bring up again. We talked a little bit about that last time. There's not a ton, honestly, on there. Oh, website restructuring. Maybe we should move that up to the top because somebody put that on. Is that you, Leanne?
I put that on, yeah. So I just wanted to, because I think we up until now only discussed the website restructuring in the platforms working group, but it's gonna be touching the website for the entire tag. And the idea, just to summarize kind of what we were discussing before, is just to surface kind of the work in progress stuff more. So it will be easier for people to immediately see how they can contribute. What are we working on? And where do we still look for feedback, or just people generally giving us some pointers. And there is a GitHub issue for that. I will share that in the Zoom right now. Oh, wait, you already shared it. Wait. And I've just started playing around a little bit with Hugo. So I can also, if I may, share my screen really quickly. So there's a doc that basically in which we are discussing just the general structure and hierarchy. And then I've started on building or just changing the page. So it would look like this, where we have like a main page with some information about the tag as such. Then there would be a section working groups where we can put all the working groups in. So far, I've only put the platforms working group, and then every working group can decide for themselves how they want to structure their own section here. And then there will be a contribute section where we will add stuff like projects that are looking for participants. So anything that's not really a working group, but just a little bit smaller maybe. And then stuff that we are looking for feedback. So really this is about getting people involved who don't want to commit a lot of time. So maybe not people who wouldn't want to come to these meetings regularly, but then we have like different levels of participation. So here you can just like look at something, give quick feedback, and then you're done. These would be more like longer running projects, and then the working groups. So what I would ask everyone, if you're interested in how to change the website, to restructure it, take a look at the doc, leave some comments. You can also just edit the doc. There's no restrictions on it. And yeah, I will also post this branch that I'm working on right now in Slack later. So you can also just commit to it. Yeah, that is it.
This is really cool, yeah.
Thanks.
But one of the questions I have, I guess, and it's really great to have it from a fresh pair of eyes, is like, am I wrong to think if I go to the website, it's kind of confusing what we do? Like, I think that might be one of the things I think people find really hard. Like, would you agree with that? Or is, yeah.
100%. I think also from like this is after KubeCon EU, when we had that booth and people came to us, I really realized most people don't even know what a tag is. Like, what are we actually doing and what value are we providing either for the CNCF or for the community? So even that, I think we need to clarify a bit more. And then it's just very difficult to realize how to contribute. Like even for me, like I had to reach out to you, Alex, and you said, oh, just hang out in the Slack channel. And then I just kind of started like doing small things. But like most people don't have the time to just hang out in a Slack channel and wait for a task to fall into their lap. So it's really about, putting everything kind of right on the silver platter. So you can just pick and choose depending on your time commitment.
It's very cool. I'm excited to see.
Well, your advice was very helpful, Alex. I'm here. I'm doing things now.
It's very hand wavy. What's really cool though is like, I think we should really get some focus groups on this. And I don't mean it in kind of a silly way, but like get some students or new people to Cloud Native and say, hey, what do you think of this preview? Because I can imagine that people understand concepts like GitOps. Yeah, I understand that. Or I've heard of vCluster. I've heard of these things. Maybe we need kind of some really catchy front page, but I love what you're doing. And I'm going to mute myself now and actually just read this doc and suggest some stuff on it. So thank you.
Yeah, I think all ideas that you have, put them in the doc. Colin is not here right now, but Colin and Abby and Josh, myself, we already started discussing kind of like what we would like to see and how we'd structure it. So yeah, the discussion is happening in there.
I think that's not just a tag issue on how to get involved. This is kind of overall getting involved in projects. So that advice would be really useful kind of overall.
Yeah, maybe
it's kind of interesting because like CNCF contributions and tags are a little different than CDK8S or Crossplane.
there's a differentiation, isn't there? There's kind of, do you want to get involved in the framework of open source versus do you want to get involved in an open source project? And I think even that is worth explaining kind of simply. We are a community of people who don't necessarily build tools and things you use, but we build the governance and structure and all of these good things around that so that we make it more accessible.
Yeah, so if since you asked about like the fresh set of eyes, my eyes are not that fresh anymore, but I think they're all intents and purposes. If you want to find out anything about the app delivery tag, maybe you will even go to the website. I found the GitHub repository first, and then it says it supports projects, produces guidance, gathers feedback, but it's very vague still. It's not, then you read through the charter and it's very much like, oh, these are the things that we care about. These are the things that are not in scope, but I'm still left with the question, like, what is it that you're actually doing, right? And then you have to dig into, okay, you have these working groups, you produce white papers. Like, this just needs to be the first sentence. Like, if it's buried, you lost me until then, right? It needs to be like the first two sentences. We provide, like, we have these 3 levels of contribution, right? You can just like provide feedback on individual stuff. You can join projects like, I don't know, Potato Head or something, or you can really like join a long running working group, or maybe even level 4, you can like be a chair or something like that. Like, just put that front and center so people know exactly immediately. And then all the charter and everything, that's like for later. That's when you really want to get very deep into governance and stuff like that.
Just reminded me, anecdotally, I opened an issue, I think, or a suggestion a while ago to revisit our charter, because I think some of the wording that we use in it and some of the concepts we have are a little bit out of date. I mean, this was really conceived many years ago now, so perhaps some of our wording could be part of your website reimagining, because I'm just looking at the current website and it's, as you say, it's like super glossy brochure vague. Maybe it could be a little bit more relatable.
Yeah, so the goal of this issue is really just to create the basic structure of it, and then have all the working groups like put the stuff in there that they want, that will be our store, like a storefront, more or less. The only thing is right now, I don't think we're doing a lot with the website, so everything is linked. So we're linking to the charter, and the charter is in the repository. Once we start moving this to the website, we need to like make sure that we're keeping stuff up to date. So yeah, in the long run, we probably need to think about, do we want to copy the charter in here, and then we need to make sure that they're always kept up to date on the website? Do we want to commit that much time and effort into the website and keeping it up to date? I think we should, because I think the website is a much better way to funnel people into the group than Git repository. It's just not as attractive. But yeah, these are all things that we need to think about in the long run, but maybe not like right now. It's not super important.
Need a marketing working group.
Do you have statistics on the website on how much traffic it gets?
We can get those. The website was fresh in April, but what's his name, Chris Abraham, that was working with us, sent me the stats because he wanted to show how the platforms paper was getting like some good traffic. So that was nice. So we can get those. Yeah, that might be helpful for you, Leanne, and helpful for all of us in planning. You want me to try to find out?
I don't know if it's super helpful right now. It would be helpful later if you want to know like what are the paths that users take to know which information maybe needs to be more upfront. But right now, since we're starting from pretty much nothing before, I don't think the previous traffic is super illuminating at the moment. But if we can,
I meant for the current traffic, yeah. Do you want
oh
me to try to...
yeah, sure. I mean, data won't ever hurt.
Yeah. Okay. I'm noting that to myself here.
Is this is basically a repo under the tag that gets pulled into Netlify, is that right? Okay. And CNCF Netlify account. Okay.
I think so. There's a separate Netlify config for the website.
Gotcha. Okay. It might be interesting for us to get a couple of people to be added to the Netlify team so that we could see the analytics if they want to pay for that. I'm sure they've got some capacity to do that. But yeah, this can be later down the line. You're getting people excited, Leanne. This is the problem. We all got ideas now.
Yay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I hope you can keep up the momentum until after the meeting.
If you make progress here, okay. So I have your back talking to Chris Abraham and getting more stats, and like basically Colin started this because they made the thing for Cartographos, the cloud native maturity model. Then he was like, let's use that for the paper too. And then we were like, let's not just use it for the paper, let's use it for the whole tag site. And then we were like, wait, every tag wants a site. And so they applied it to every tag. So that, and then we were like, we need a repo too, and that's why we're getting repos now. So it's all kind of evolving as we go.
I mention it too because thinking ahead, there's a lot of excitement now, and then as people get busier, especially people who are involved in multiple projects, and you know, you have to keep up on Slack and GitHub and website, and then we don't want the website to become stale as people have to move off or move on. So just wanted to put that out there, but it's great work, Leon.
Thanks.
One thing this is really interesting conversation is what exactly is the tag's role? Like I've thought about this a lot, and I sometimes think of us as PMs, governance over the project, especially PM. Sometimes I think CNCF is the PM to Kubernetes engineering. But like we are bringing these like there's no standards bodies in cloud. So how do you get 10 different API builders to get in a room and talk to each other and pursue conventions? We won't call them standards. So maybe we can take inspiration from like standards bodies in other fields and, you know, organizing committees, you know, industry trade bodies, so that we're trying to facilitate letting all these projects come together. And, you know, I think personally, I have a lot of cross-cutting ideas, so I like to work with lots of projects, but so I think that's part of it. But okay. Just wanted to share that out loud if anyone else has any thoughts on, you know, what is our job.
I think just to maybe expand or lend additional thought there, you know, I see it somewhat differently. I don't think standardization is necessarily part of the role here, and it's to be a focal point for the community, right? That's first and foremost the chief goal, is to bring people of like minds into a safe, shared, and constructive environment to which they can not only find, but be connected to projects for collaboration and contribution, and also to use as end users. So maybe it's more like we're guides, you know, perhaps that's another way of phrasing it, but I'm sure the truth lies somewhere between, you know, all these different definitions.
What you just said, Alex, is kind of emphasizes our role to end users maybe a lot, and I was kind of emphasizing our role to, I don't know, projects and maintainers.
These are probably both worth categorizing as on this new charter, right? Which is specifically what I sort of was trying to get at, is that I think the actual deliverables of the tag have evolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a conversation at KubeCon which really stuck with me, which was a person who wanted basically us to be the people he can point to tell his manager, this is the way that you need to do it because the CNCF says so, right? And he basically wanted to use our authority to make a political point, more or less. And like even that, whether we are the right people to do that or not, we could, like, that is also important to communicate. Even if we say like we don't know what the right way is, we just like have some recommendations, maybe some suggestions. But yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm trying to remember the point I was going to make. Going back to community, and so like I think many of us here are involved in multiple communities, but then also multiple tags, and then SIGs, and then so on. So as a focal point, there's a lot of projects that overlap multiple tags, right? So if it's a focal point for community, that gets confusing for me because, wow, I only have so much time. And I love this tag and what this tag is doing and the working groups and all the deliverables. So Alex, you mentioned, you know, what the deliverables have changed. I'd be interested to hear how you saw them in the beginning, how you see what a deliverable out of this tag is now, and what that gives back to the community, so end users, as well as Josh was mentioning, you know, projects, etc. So there's a balance across the board, but I'm trying to understand, I'm sure each of us has a different expectation of the tag. So back to Leon's point of capturing, you know, what you're trying to do, why, you know, and then how. So, yeah.
One of the things, just to answer a little part of that question, perhaps, is that when the tags first created, they really focused a lot around building the initial inertia behind community, right? Setting office hours, email lists, all the trappings of something that's reproducible. And so that initial momentum has gotten wider and has now become leadership in these categories, right? So having people who have significant amount of industry knowledge, who can sort of put other people together within the CNCF. Now, the way I think it's started to change is that really the new emphasis is on end user education, is that is now the primary, or at least one of the primary functions of the technical advisory groups. It's, you know, gathering all the input around what are the industry standards, what's being used, not necessarily what's best, and providing high quality education and high quality information for our community. And I think if we can strive to do even 50% of that, then we will be doing an excellent job, because that's a really broad and quite a hard mandate to hit. But, you know, that's my interpretation. And I think another reason why having 3 chairs and 3 leads works really well is you get a lot of overlapping opinions on that, and that creates kind of a nice rich tapestry of velocity.
Thank you. Yeah, that was helpful to chat about that. I think that this kind of leans into the next couple things. So I reordered the agenda slide. I'm always refactoring as I go, so just bear with me. But the next couple things are KubeCon plans and project reviews. Maybe I should almost switch that up. Project reviews, because we're talking about what the group does. Sandbox are an easy one to help with, but of course there's also incubating and graduated. Here are some, like, are there ones here that we should proactively reach out to and ask to come talk to us, or support them like we tried to do with Yassi and with Microx, you know? And that's also leads into, I put it here, process refinements. Like, could we provide some standard templates to guide people coming to present? What do we want from them? You know, what kinds of questions might we ask? And then guide us, like, okay, they presented, now what do we do? Do we write a post in the Sandbox issue? Do we create a permanent doc in some repo? You know, sorry, I'm going a long term there. Basically, I wanted to know if, you know, how people think we might interact with projects, if we should proactively pick some up, whether from Sandbox or from existing.
I don't want to monopolize the chat here, but it might be an idea to take a few of these different projects that can complete some sort of end-to-end, you know, showcase of delivery, right? So taking something in GitOps, taking something that facilitates the build process, something else that does maybe some day 2 operations pieces, and putting those all together and inviting some of the maintainers and contributors of those projects to speak a little to them at the booth and at KubeCon, because I think that would really be enough. Because remember, we're on the bleeding edge and we're thinking about all these second order problems and all this really advanced stuff, but really a lot of people just want things that are kind of encapsulated in easy to understand knowledge, and that could be a good start.
Yeah, actually, Alex, one of the proposals, and this comes up pretty frequently actually in the platforms meeting, is we want to create what we call the prototype platform. Basically doing what you just kind of described, like coming up with some use cases. That's what has been every time we talk about it, we're like, we got to define the use case first. You can't just build a platform in a vacuum. But yeah, defining some use cases and then bringing in the relevant projects. You know, it's going to start out relatively opinionated, but like you're saying, Potato Head, I think, is a little along those lines too.
It'd be really interesting to hear back from some of you folks, like Leanne, Thomas, and Josh yourself, like around what people were asking at the booth last KubeCon, and looking to see whether we can kind of capitalize on some of those questions to really bring something that will, you know, excite and evoke reaction from the next audience that attends.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. I'm gonna write that in. We did do kind of a post-mortem last time. We should make sure.
I think one of the things that's probably quite wise about showing a couple of projects in a real world situation is that, these projects have their own booths, right? Like we don't just want to be a booth for a project that's already got people, maintainers there. Like that, it's very little value add for us. Whereas if we show it in a more cohesive environment of like, hey, fictitious bank A wanted to increase their velocity by going to cloud native. Here's this kind of story. And here are all the tools that app delivery has, helped to create and cares about. That could be interesting.
That was that's kind of what we did, I think, in EU. Like we had Potato Head, but we want to do more. So yeah, I think you're right on the same.
Potato Head is pretty simple, right? It is a microservice that deploys into Kubernetes with 15 different ways, right? That doesn't really solve business problems. Whereas if you are focusing more on personas of Alex owns a startup and wants to be able to move to cloud native, but he only has 3 engineers, or Leanne owns a $50 million business and she's looking to move from traditional data centers into the cloud, like actually focusing on these kind of use cases and then mapping that to how app delivery projects meet those needs, I think is more interesting.
Yeah, I'm working on the platforms working group because I don't know what to do with my money. I think if we're talking a little bit about the KubeCon plans, this is what I was already working on a little bit last time when we were discussing like what should we do at the booth and what would we need for in case of like marketing material. So it was super helpful that we just published the white paper because already we had something that we could just talk to people about. What I also liked was the lightning talks that we had at the booth, because that was less us explaining to you how you're supposed to do things, or like this is how we're more like bringing people together in the community, right? It was more like we're providing a platform and a space for people to just exchange ideas around the topic of app delivery. So I did like that we created that space, but then maybe we need a bit more just stuff that we can tell people when they come, right? As you said, like this is case study of company XYZ. I think that was maybe missing a little bit, which is why a lot of our conversations were just a bit general. Either they were about the platforms white paper, or they were just very, very general about app delivery. What is a tag? What do we do? So if like for the next one, we could have more specific stuff, like even, for example, the maturity model, the platform maturity model would be great. Anything where we now know we want some feedback from people. The platform survey. I mean, there's a lot of platform stuff that I'm looking at right now because I'm looking at the docs. But again, we could ask all the working groups to provide some ideas. If we still have a booth this year in Chicago, do we?
We have to apply for it.
Don't forget to apply for the stickers this time.
Just a question. I mean, before we even get that far, I think a really simple activity that would be very useful is to identify which projects actually have grown up through tag app delivery, right? And what I mean by is, their problem area, is it in our scope, and have they consulted, have they worked with us perhaps? Because the only one I can think of that's actually graduated is Harbor, and that's quite some time ago. So if we want to make something with some project logos to say, let's take these and connect the dots and build a solution, we got to start with that, right? We've got to understand which projects in the CNCF landscape actually relate back to tag app delivery. Because that will, that's just a useful activity for us to do anyway, right? Like a State of the Union. And I can help do that, but I feel like that's a bit of a rabbit hole.
So yeah, actually there's a bit of a start on that. Like, so take a look at what Leo Palke has been saying. And they're working on being able to tag tags, in the landscape items. So that might be a start, even just making sure everything that should be tagged tag app delivery is tagged, and yeah, bring those together. I think I mean, I really like the stuff you're saying, Alex. I think a lot of us have kind of similar ideas. Like, let's bring these projects together, build some prototype platforms, define the use cases, write ADRs has been a thing that's come up. Like, why did we decide X? Why did we decide Y? It's kind of the resources to do it is kind of what's.
I mean, it's the key challenge with these kind of death by committee approaches is that it's a lot of conversation and very little doing. I am happy to be somewhat proactive, but I would need definitely to know more around which projects are in our tag and not overlapping with others. So maybe that I'll read through this issue you've mentioned that it's gone up. But that could be, yeah, maybe we need to have a working group for KubeCon. You know, it could be something as practical as that.
Yeah, that probably makes sense that we might need a separate meeting just to talk about that. But I'm thinking for this, like, to get a prototype platform, like, to me, what I kind of see is we need someone to just spike it. We need someone that has the time to spend a week and, you know, use Cube Spray, set up Kubernetes, set up a standard CNI, set up a standard, you know, 10 controller managers that people need, like Flux and Argo and whatnot. You know, Backstage or something, you know, there too. And then just share it with this group and let's party on it. Like, I don't know, feels like if we get something that's like 60-70% done, then we can move forward. Till we can get that,
I'm going to have a couple of weeks off coming up in the next couple of weeks, so I can try and put a POC together under our organization in GitHub if that helps. Then somebody else can take the baton and do a better job.
I think that's a good way to, yeah, I would love that. We can even get one of these new repos they're creating and put the stuff in there.
Sure.
Yeah, it's on my short list. But like, I don't know. I've got it's all OpenShift focused, my stuff right now. So that's what would take time for me. So we talked a little bit about Sandbox and how we approach Sandbox. We didn't really say too much, but at least we brought up, I guess we did, because Alex, you brought up like how we could tag the ones that are relevant to our tag and start to get a little focus around those. We talked a little about, so that was helpful. We talked a little bit about KubeCon plans. Mostly we talked about the booth, what we would do at the booth. And Leanne, you kind of emphasized we should focus on new stuff. What else do we have to talk about around KubeCon?
We talked about maybe meeting on Friday. There's 13 colos and then other vendor events. So meeting on Monday, I think you wouldn't get a lot of people. So I like the idea of meeting on Friday, but we didn't really get a consensus. And I know people will have to start making travel plans, even though it is July, but.
Yeah, does anyone know, maybe we need to escalate this to the CNCF, like the technical group as a whole. What are the other project meetings? So I think this is what you're getting at, Karena, that we've run a project meeting of our own the past couple KubeCons, maybe once before that, where we tried to bring together the working groups, projects that are related to app delivery, you know, new ideas, and have us all share with each other, kind of to advance, you know, the maintainer group. There were like 20 last time on the pre-day. Now, in addition to those, we also have the 13 Colo events. So we were talking about, should we have project meetings on Friday? So I guess there's that. And then there's, but the kind of tied into that is like, do we want to have them all together and like have an organized like maintainer day or project meeting day on Friday? Am I taking it too far, Karena? Like, do we need to, I kind of want to know what the other tags are doing and the other projects. Are they going to have a bunch of meetings on Monday? In which case, maybe we just go along with the crowd, or we say, hey, why don't you come to us on Friday?
I don't think we have to do what they do. Oh, go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
So say, why don't we not orientate to what other people are doing and align to what is going to be the best end user experience probably a single day of just like, I can drop in and understand what app delivery is doing and making it super simple that they can just understand this is the track for our maintainer day and this is the stuff that I care about. My worry is that if we try to do too much and try to spread it over a couple of days, many of us have booth responsibilities or vendor responsibilities, and it will end up being a lot of fragmentation and perhaps a lot of overhead logistically, and just stress, right?
Okay, so I guess what we're saying here is we'd like to think about the idea of Friday, but we want to find out what other tags in the technical oversight committee are doing.
I would maybe make an argument against the Friday, but I'm not even going to Chicago this year, but it is the last day and I'm usually on the third day of KubeCon. I'm just done. I'm completely fried. I would not be able to work on anything really productively. So I would probably say Monday or Tuesday would for me be a preferred day, but I'm not going.
Yeah, good feedback. Yeah. And Karana, that was a good suggestion. Maybe we use the booth some. All right, I guess next steps are to find out what the other tags are doing. I know tag security was particularly interested in talking, so I can ask them because they had a whole booth last time. I mean, sorry, not a whole booth, a whole like sub conference. Let's start with that. Sorry, what?
So in addition to the colo security one, there's a tag security separate conference.
In Amsterdam, there was a separate room, which was like the security something. So I don't know. I talked to some of them and they were like, well, why didn't we do like tag app delivery? Just have the booth at the solution showcase. So I don't know. It wasn't clear whether it worked out better to have the separate one or not, but we could align with them.
I think also did the booths, the tag booths, were they all next to each other? I can't remember. Amsterdam's kind of a blur.
The solution, so they give like a floor for projects and they gave us right there. So we were like next to Crossplane and Captain and OCM and all the other projects that are a cert manager. And then our booth was split actually. Tag contributor strategy took it for the afternoon and we had the morning. I don't know if anyone else had a booth, any of the other tags.
By the way, I'm looking at the schedule right now, and the conference it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so there's not even a Friday. But then
Right.
for Amsterdam, they had like the Monday co-located events, but then there were additional co-located events on the Sunday that were for vendors, I think. I don't know if they're going to do this year again.
We had Monday and Tuesday for colo events, and then we had Wednesday through Friday. So Chicago is now Monday and then Tuesday through Thursday.
Yeah, I thought that in Amsterdam, they had the regular co-located events on the day before, and then they had like a special vendor co-located day the day before. Was that, it was just 2 days?
You could do a colo event either Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we ran one operator day on Monday and rejects was on Sunday.
There's so many.
Rejects was Sunday and Monday, I think, and that's why it overlapped with a bunch of co-located events because we didn't know that KubeCon was going to add the Monday back as co-located events because before they just had the Tuesday or something. Anyhow, doesn't matter. I'm just saying that maybe they want to do another thing on the Sunday before, maybe not.
I mean, for us, we can't do it on Sunday, right? Because the exhibition hall won't be open.
Yeah.
So we're a bit more limited, but yeah, we can talk about this more, I guess. I still think we need a working group around KubeCon. Or at least something.
Alex. That's the problem. Who's gonna?
I mean, this is part of the problem with working groups. There's so much formality and Byzantine process you've got to go through. Let's just have a meeting about KubeCon done.
Yeah, I think that the thing is we need to get some representatives from the other tags. That's or it may be the talk even to participate. So it's going to be hurting the folks to come together. But I agree, it would be great. You know, just the leaders of the
KubeCon.
yeah. What do we think this should look like? Because it's kind of dictated by marketing, for what it's worth. Like we're getting this handed to us, and should we, have establish some opinions from the technical group? I consider like the tags and the talk like we're all the technical group. Okay, so yeah, let's keep talking about that. I think one thing we can conclude here though is that we do want a booth. We want to I like what you said, Leanne, about lightning talks. Like we do want to pursue that kind of thing wherever it's at, whether it's at the project meeting or maybe a couple times at the booth. We should get crisper on what the message we share at the booth. Definitely the things Alex said, showing some use cases and finding some technical uses, but finding some like business use cases. Yeah, so do we all agree that we should have a booth and pursue stuff at the booth?
Yeah, I think maybe the working group is not even like tied to KubeCon, but maybe we do need a working group to like clarify our message, because that can then go to the website, can go to the on marketing material for KubeCon, can go on everything.
You mean the work to refine the charter that Alex has
Yeah,
been
the charter, or just give us like 2 sentences that clarify what the tag is. Either way, I don't care. Like, it just give me like a tagline.
tagline. Yeah, I can help with that. Yeah, and if people want to, I mean, it's the same people. Like if Alex, if you want to get together, the 3 or 4 of us to, just drill in on the charter one day.
I think just one question regarding that point, especially regarding the booth and the Colo event and the tag meeting on the Monday, because we all know that Monday is very crowded and very, very busy. I mean, there's meeting for project all around, Colo event all around, and it's kind to be impossible for all of us to, let's say, to go to each of the stuff we would like to be, and maybe the lightning talks, maybe they can be on the booth only and not on Monday, so then you can win maybe some time. And I remember the last time was maybe 1 or 2 hours. And on the other end, I don't know if there is any Colo event who are taking the full day on Monday or only half a day. Otherwise, on Monday we can have, let's say, could be great if it's dedicated to a CNCF event on Monday morning, for example, and Colo the afternoon or stuff like that, and try to avoid any overlap. I guess maybe it's going to be impossible, but some stuff to mitigate that could be really appreciated for certainly all of us and all the people who would like to join us as well. But I clearly think that lightning talk on the booth, that's maybe a good way to win some time, first of all. And lightning talks, by the way, especially for sandbox project or people who would like to jump in as a sandbox project, like us last time in Amsterdam, that was very, very valuable and appreciated.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. That's good feedback. Okay, so yeah, so we got to pursue the booth. We'll do that in the background. We'll get that going. We'll keep talking about the project meetings. I think that makes sense. What else here? So the last couple things that we want to keep going through the agenda. Or yeah, does anyone want to talk more about KubeCon? Anything else? Sessions, project meetings. Okay. So a couple other things on the agenda. One, I wanted to just call out the process refinements that have been coming up. If anyone wants to contribute to them. One, Jen had started, but I don't think she's working on it. A little more like in our contributing.md doc, it does say like, oh, you have a project, come present it to us. but can we elaborate on that more? Guidance for working group formation, that's kind of on me, I guess. What we've been doing with Ouija artifacts. There is discussion upstream about in the talk about tag formation, if anybody's interested in there. They're talking now about, I haven't read it carefully yet, but they want to create a GitHub org for us to have tag repos if people haven't seen that. So that will be helpful for things like Potato Head and prototypes and Ouija artifacts needs a repo. So and then the last one was, there was some feedback that we're getting like AI generated content and you know, distracting content, maybe too much public relations content, marketing content in some of our forums. Seems like the best way to tackle that is to just describe what we expect. So we opened an issue for that. Yeah, if anyone wants to contribute on those.
With regards to the working group formation, you know, I actually went back and read the TOC definition of this, and it isn't required to get the TOC to vote on it at all, or even acknowledge them, right? So I think often we've sort of done belt and braces where we've gone overboard, right, and had to told them, and it's been a very slow process. But as far as I read the document, we are at full discretion to create short-lived working groups as we so see fit. We can confirm that shortly with Justin. But yeah, just because I think that, as I said earlier, jokingly, like there is a kind of anxiety around like, oh, I've got to create a working group, someone's got to lead it. There's all, you know, all these things you got to do, but actually they should be surgical instruments, right, for solving problems and for exploring opportunities.
That's fair. You might find other opinions in some of the threads in talk. Like there's debate because the working group says, you know, it has to only be short-lived and stuff, but the fact is that a lot of them are permanent.
Okay, I'm just reading off of what the I'm not debating the longevity of the working group, more the formation of the process itself. It's explicitly said that you can create a working group within your tag.
Good. So we can merge it as soon as we want.
Yes, effectively. And you know, if you don't do that, you're going to be subject to waiting for the TOC for months to look at your issue.
Yeah.
I think it's good. It was also a reason, a problem we had with cooperative delivery / platforms working group initially, that we had a lot of traction in the beginning, but had to wait for a TOC vote until it got accepted, and therefore, this costed us a bit of traction for the project.
That process was like death by 1,000 cuts. It was absolutely awful, and people dogpiled in to be involved, but yeah, it took a long time. It was incredibly bureaucratic. So I welcome, you know, being able to have slightly more autonomy around this.
Yeah, I think if we just write, this is our process, maybe that's the way, you know, then at least we have a process. Anyone has a question?
I think it's just kind of use common sense, right? Like have working groups around things that make sense for the right reasons and do a bit of governance and close them down when they're done.
So with the platform working group, in the beginning, it felt like there was not the formation of it, but naming it took longer than anything else. And that wasn't a TOC issue. And so myself, it was hard trying to show up to meetings, and they were just about, what do you name something? Or so I just wanted to say that. And then with 8 minutes left, can I mention the process for Sandbox really fast? Since you went over it, Josh, it's something I brought up with TOC members, is that as we're looking at Sandbox projects, and people have less and less time as the industry is, what's the right word, retracting, or people have to be more efficient with their time. As projects come forward, sometimes it might be good to see if they could merge with another project that you know, might be similar? Is there, so I just wanted to throw that out there, because there's so many projects. And I know the TOC is being mindful of approving projects, so maybe another alternative could be, you know, is there, does it make sense to merge? So throw that out.
I think that it's a really good point that there are a lot of competing projects that are looking to fill the same space. I also think the reality is that many of these projects are driven by commercial entities, and these are the open source marketing efforts to put them into the CNCF. And so they're going to be dictated by the mandate to get their project in and own exclusive access of it, right? Control the governance. And it's not a pessimistic point of view, it's just a realistic point of view, right? Because they will have an enterprise offering of said product or some linkage to it. And so you'll see that many of these people are very resistant to that idea of, can you sort of combine two projects? One though that has been successful is OpenTelemetry, right? Because that combined open census, open metrics, but that was quite a rare occurrence, I would say. But I would welcome that as well. One other thing is that I think we need to sort of provide a barometer of how likely your project is to succeed in getting through Sandbox, because it can help save a lot of time, I think.
I think the TOCs are trying to also guide companies on not using the CNCF as a, it is, I mean, it is a big marketing organization, right? I mean, let's be real, but if a project is only pushed through by a commercial entity and it's only in the CNCF as a marketing function, is that really adding value to the rest of the CNCF ecosystem? So yeah, anyway, that's like a whole other discussion.
I know that I used the word standards before, that probably, but the standards bodies are not necessarily what vendors want. Vendors would prefer creating their own, you know, custom solutions that they can iterate on as fast as possible, that have the API shapes that they completely own. But the standards really help the end users because they don't have to choose from 10 different similar projects. They don't have to, you know, have the vendors bake all the vendors are supporting each other. So yeah, that's in that way, we're kind of like a standards body. We're representing the end users' interests in synergies amongst the projects they use. Just sharing. That's what comes to mind when you mentioned like merging projects and things. It's like, well, if we have an OpenTelemetry itself is unusual in that it's a standard, really. It's not a project. It's not an implementation like most. I mean, it does have collector and stuff, but it's more an API.
A really good point, because really Kubernetes is just a standard now. If you think about it, the API, there's many different implementations of it. And those are often the most successful projects, the ones that are interoperable. And so things like, if you look at Argo, CD, and Flux, is there more a pattern of GitOps as a practice that's the pattern and the standard? Like, it's a really interesting sort of way of thinking of these things.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Argo CD and Flux, because Pipe CD just came through us the other week, and like, how do they, like, now do I say Argo, Flux, and Pipe, or is Pipe just a second one? Like, I'm not, no offense to the Pipe CD folks, but like, that's, yeah, how to, the Open GitOps project, there's an Argo project meeting, but what about the other GitOps folks? Or even Chaos, like Chaos Engineering, which, by the way, I put on the note because I've been trying to reach out to those guys, and is this a thing? Because it just seems to be Litmus Chaos, but now Kraken is coming from Red Hat, so I noticed that one. But there's a couple other ones, like, is there a group here? And sorry, now I brought up Chaos.
See, I mean, that's a good point, because again, you know, Josh and I are both from Red Hat, but does Kraken make more sense to be combined with another project? Is, you know, does it make more sense on its own? It'd be great to get input from the Chaos Engineering Working Group, etc. I mean,
I suppose the litmus test on that will be, if they say yes, it'll be, will the organization agree to cede some of the ownership of the IP to, obviously it's probably under an MIT license already, but the actual governance and direction will have to open up to a more diluted set of people who maybe not have the same goals as yourselves, who are funding the development of the product. And again, I'm not a pessimist around this. I've just done this quite a lot. So it is something I've had to really think about with even legal counsel sometimes, because it can be one thing to hear that advice, it'll be another thing to swallow that pill. I mean, this is someone who works with Ubuntu, right?
But when you also donate to the CNCF, that's what you are also signing up for, is relinquishing some control. And I know a lot of projects don't see it that way, but
Technically, yes and no. There are many ways to get around it, which projects do, such as they will employ contracted people to work inside of the maintainers. Or also you can rotate your governors, your governance body, so that they're all people within the majority within your company. You can have emeritus, so that also adds, like, there's a whole bunch of ways around it. But you are right, you should be seeding it and think of it as like it's there for the world, for everyone to use. But the reality is that, for example, Kubernetes is still pejoratively Google, who and Red Hat to a degree, who really do run that project. And maybe that's an institutional problem we need to fix.
I know. With the 1 minute, it's probably.
But this was awesome. I think this is exactly what we're trying to figure out as a tag, is managing these projects and coming up with an efficient way to do it. So I'm glad we had that discussion. Yeah, we better wrap it up here. Yeah, I like to go through and think of action items and figure out, but yeah, I don't know if I can do that right this minute. So look over the stuff. I know we have a couple conclusions that we have to pursue. I'm on the things that I'm on. Leanne is working on the website, help her out with that. Yeah, and we'll chat more on Slack and keep moving things forward, and GitHub. Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Thomas, how you doing? All right.
Very fine, thanks. I think Josh wrote sent out a meeting for a Google meeting, as far as I know.
Oh, this should be a Google Meet, should it? Oh, okay.
Yes, he shared the link now.
Okay. See you then. Bye.
See you there.